There comes a moment when the noise in the mind becomes unbearable. You've analyzed everything, forgiven everyone, revisited the past from every angle, and still you find no peace. The mind circles endlessly, chewing the same old stories like a dog gnawing a dry bone. What if I had said that? What if tomorrow goes wrong? What if I never get it right? And under it all, the quiet, trembling fear that without thought, you might disappear. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if it's thought that keeps you trapped, and silence that reveals who you really are? Dr. David Hawkins once said, "The transcendence of thought is automatic." That sentence alone can save you years of struggle, because it means peace is not achieved through doing, but through seeing, through understanding the nature of thought itself. You don't have to suppress it, control it, or replace it with better thoughts. The mind becomes quiet when you no longer believe it is necessary for survival. The mind thinks because it's afraid. It plans, analyzes, and replays because it believes that safety lies in mental motion. Yet ironically, that motion creates the very suffering it's trying to prevent. Thought, when driven by fear, is like a hand trembling to hold water. The harder it tries, the more it spills. Overthinking is not intelligence. It's anxiety pretending to be control. The mind's favorite diet consists of two meals, the past and the future. It feeds on memories it cannot change, and fantasies it cannot predict. The past fills it with regret, the future with fear. But both are illusions projected by the same source, the ego's belief in separateness. If you look carefully, you'll see that the past is not even real memory. It's the ego's interpretation of what once was, filtered through emotion. You can't remember reality itself, only your perception of it. And perception is always biased by the state of consciousness you were in at the time. So when you ruminate about the past, you're not remembering truth, you're remembering distortion. You're watching old footage recorded through a dirty lens and wondering why it looks so dark. Once you realize that, you stop editing the past, you stop trying to fix it. You let it fade into neutrality. As Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, once said, "Have a decent regret and live differently. That's all." A sincere, humble regret is enough to dissolve the weight of the past. No drama, no self-punishment, no spiritual theater, just the quiet willingness to say, "I see now, and I choose another way." Guilt and overanalysis are ego's favorite distractions from growth. They keep you focused on the idea that salvation is personal, that if you can just fix your story, you can be free. But you are not your story. The story is the cage. The more you analyze it, the stronger its walls become. The future is the same illusion wearing a different mask. Thought projects ahead to maintain control. What if is its favorite prayer. It plans against disaster, prepares for imagined pain, and calls it responsibility. Yet every plan built on fear produces more fear. The ego's motto is, "If I can think of every possible problem, I'll be safe." But you can't plan your way to peace, you can only surrender to it. The truth is, you are already safe. The body may die one day, but you are not the body. Survival belongs to form, not to spirit. When you realize this directly, thought loses its job. The mind stops racing because it finally understands that nothing essential is at risk. This is why spiritual surrender is not a loss, it's relief. It's the realization that the universe does not need your constant supervision. The sun will rise whether or not you think about it. Life doesn't need your permission to unfold. Once this understanding settles in, thinking becomes intermittent, spontaneous, effortless, useful when needed, and silent when not. The gaps between thoughts grow wider, like windows opening to the infinite. In those spaces, peace appears. You realize that silence was never the absence of something, it was the presence of everything. To the overthinker, silence feels like danger. To the awakened, it feels like home. When you stop identifying with thought, you stop being the thinker. You become the awareness in which thought appears and disappears. that awareness is untouched by time. It has no past, no future, it simply witnesses. When you rest as that witnessing, thought naturally slows because you no longer feed it with belief. Look at how the mind tries to fix what it never broke. I wish I had said this, I wish I hadn't done that. But the past is just the echo of the same consciousness that created those choices. It was ignorance, not evil. As Jesus said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That includes forgiving yourself. The only true sin is unawareness, and even that dissolves in the light of understanding. Ignorance is not shameful, it is universal. Every human begins there. The path isn't about perfecting the ego, but outgrowing it. The mind loves to dramatize its failures, to sit in emotional sackcloth and ashes, hoping guilt will purchase redemption. But guilt is just ego disguised as humility. It says, look how unworthy I am, while secretly trying to manipulate God into approval. Suffering does not make you holy, surrender does. Stop performing for divinity. It already loves you beyond measure. You cannot bribe God with self-hatred. When you accept that your mistakes were born of ignorance, regret becomes peaceful instead of punishing. You bow to the lesson, not the shame. You let the past dissolve, because it no longer serves the present moment. Once the past is forgiven, attention turns to the future and the need to control it. But control is a mirage. It is the ego's attempt to play God while pretending to serve him. You plan, you strategize, you prepare for all eventualities, and yet life still surprises you. The lesson is clear. The world runs on a higher intelligence, not on your schedule. To surrender the future means to accept that everything is already being handled by that intelligence. Call it God, consciousness, the self. The name doesn't matter. The realization does. When you surrender, you stop living as though the universe is a malfunctioning machine you must constantly repair. This surrender is not passivity. It is trust. It means you continue to act, but from alignment rather than anxiety. You still drive the car, but you're not gripping the wheel in panic. You trust that the road exists beneath you, that life is steering itself through you. The mind fears silence because it equates it with death. To the ego, the absence of thinking feels like disappearance. But to the soul, silence feels like returning home. It is not the annihilation of self. It is the revelation of self. You do not become less, you become infinite. Overthinking is what happens when you forget that life already knows what it's doing. The intellect is like a nervous child tugging at the hem of creation, asking, "Are you sure? Are you sure we're safe?" And the universe, like a patient parent, smiles and whispers, "Be still. I've got you." Dr. Hawkins said that the mind becomes silent automatically when you realize that you are absolutely safe. Think about that. You don't need to make the mind quiet. You simply need to realize there is nothing to fear. Fear is the current that powers thought. Pull the plug on fear and the current stops. Even if the worst were to happen, even death. What then? You would return to the same awareness that's listening right now, the one that has never come and never gone. Every spiritual awakening begins with this recognition. Survival belongs to the body, not to consciousness. The mind's obsession with control comes from forgetting that you are not a thing in time. You are the timeless awareness through which time appears. The ego is a poor architect of reality. It tries to plan a future it cannot predict and repair a past that never truly existed. Yet it is tireless in its attempts. It's why we worry, plan, scheme, and regret, all to maintain an illusion of control. The moment you see this, you can laugh, not cynically but tenderly. The humor of the divine is in the futility of ego. God loves even our foolishness because it is born of innocence. Hawkins once joked that people who predict the end of the world always choose dates far enough ahead that they won't be around to see they were wrong. That's how the mind works, terrified of the unknown, desperate to feel prepared, even in fantasy, but you can't prepare for what doesn't exist. The future is not real. It's imagination projected outward, and the past is memory projected backward. Only the present is true, and even the present is more like a flowing river than a frozen frame. The attempt to control it is like trying to stop water with your hands. Once you let go of control, something miraculous happens. The present begins to shimmer with aliveness. You notice beauty again, in the way light falls through a window, in the sound of laughter, in the taste of air after rain. You cry at the snow on the mountains, not from sadness but from recognition. Life was never ordinary. You were simply too distracted to see. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is reverence. It is the soul remembering itself through beauty. Every moment contains divinity, if you are willing to look without demand. The spiritual path isn't about techniques or positions or mantras. It's about perception. It's about contextualizing life as sacred. When you see everything as divine expression, overthinking dissolves on its own because there's nothing left to fix. The mind says, I must know what to do. The heart says, I already am what I need to be. The difference between these two voices is the difference between struggle and peace. When Hawkins said, just be who you really are, he meant that no practice can make you divine. You already are. The only obstacle is pretense. The ego believes it must earn enlightenment. The soul knows it never left it. What you are seeking is what is seeking through you. As this realization deepens, you notice that life becomes remarkably simple. You stop fighting every current. You walk through the world on the wings of truth, as he said, light, effortless, untouchable. You may still face the same external circumstances, but internally, something has shifted. You no longer interpret experience as threat or validation. You see it all as movement within one consciousness, your own. Then surrender becomes total. You surrender not because you must, but because it feels natural. You stop arguing with reality. You no longer need to plan how to be spiritual, or how to stay safe, or how to think the right thoughts. Life lives itself through you. You become what Hawkins called the condition of God, not as a person who controls, but as an awareness that allows. And in this allowing there is laughter. True spiritual understanding is always accompanied by humor, because you see how seriously the ego takes what never mattered. You stop walking with the weight of heaven on your shoulders. You walk lightly, smiling at the divine absurdity of human worry. Even death becomes a punchline, not mockery but liberation. So you die, he said with a chuckle. And then what? You find you're still here. This lightness doesn't mean indifference, it's the opposite. It means you finally love life without trying to possess it. You love people without needing to control them. You love God without fear of disapproval. This is the love that frees, not the sentimental kind, but the fearless kind. So how do you live now, in this new context? You live as devotion. Be devoted to beauty, to truth, to all that is sacred. Not as an obligation, but as a natural response to awareness. Every sunrise becomes an altar, every breath a prayer. Devotion is not ceremony, it's perception. When you see through the eyes of reverence, everything becomes holy. You stop chasing mystical experiences and start living mystical awareness. The sacred reveals itself not in temples or retreats, but in the simplest acts. Tying your shoes, washing your hands, speaking kindly. Life itself becomes meditation. There's nothing to escape, nothing to attain, only to notice. And as you walk through this world, something extraordinary happens. The world responds. The universe mirrors your inner state. When you are peaceful, life becomes peaceful. When you are open, life opens. When you are surrendered, life flows in perfect rhythm. When you are thus to the world, said Hawkins, the world is thus to thee. You walk safely through the hail of bullets, not because fate spares you, but because fear no longer exists within you. This is the real meaning of surrender, not resignation, but fearless trust. The past is forgiven, the future is surrendered, and the present is innocent. What remains to fear? Nothing. What remains to control? Nothing. You are free. At the deepest level, surrender is not something you do, it's something you stop doing. You stop arguing, resisting, regretting, predicting, performing, and pretending. You stop trying to hold reality hostage with your thoughts. The moment you cease to manipulate life, you discover that life was never your enemy, it was your teacher all along. The mind, when left to itself, wants to be the author of existence. It wants to write the script, cast the roles, and direct the timing. But the more it interferes, the more chaos it creates. Surrender doesn't mean throwing away responsibility. It means releasing the illusion of authorship. You realize that you are not the writer. You are the awareness in which the story unfolds. That realization changes everything. When you let go of controlling outcomes, the mind's compulsive movement loses its fuel. Thought quiets not because you suppress it, but because you no longer feed it with fear. The stillness that remains is not dull or blank, it's radiant. It hums with silent intelligence. It knows what to say, when to act, when to rest. The mind becomes a servant of that intelligence, not its master. Many people ask, but if I stop thinking, how will I function? The answer is, you won't stop thinking entirely. You'll stop being addicted to thinking. The mind will still move, but only when it needs to. It will think when thought is useful and rest when it's not. You'll discover that wisdom arises spontaneously without premeditation. The right words come, the right actions flow, and you'll wonder how you ever believed you needed to control it all. This is not the end of the mind, it's the redemption of it. Hawkins liked to say, you don't have to worry that you'll forget to take your vitamins. Life takes care of life. The spirit moves through everything, through your memory, your relationships, even your mistakes. The ego thinks it must keep everything spinning. But once you trust the unseen hand, you realize that life has always been spinning itself. Faith is not belief, it's direct knowing. Belief needs reassurance, faith simply is. It knows that whatever happens, you are safe. It knows that even in loss, the essence of you remains untouched. It knows that death itself is only a change of form, not the end of being. This realization allows a deep laughter to rise in you, the laughter of freedom. You laugh because you see that the whole struggle was a misunderstanding. You were never meant to be the one steering the universe. You were meant to witness its beauty. You were meant to walk through it as awareness embodied. And when this awareness becomes steady, you begin to see beauty everywhere, not as sentimentality, but as recognition. You look at a tree and see the same light that lives in you. You look at a stranger and feel an invisible connection. You look at suffering and see the innocence beneath it. The entire world becomes a mirror of the divine. This is what it means to live in surrender, to walk through the world with open eyes and an untroubled heart. You no longer carry chains of the past or the armor of the future. You walk naked in truth, protected by nothing but awareness, and awareness needs no protection. The great paradox is that only when you stop trying to survive do you discover that you are indestructible. The ego dies 1,000 tiny deaths, but consciousness remains, watching, knowing, loving. The personality becomes light, the emotions soften, and life begins to dance instead of struggle. Surrender is the final form of intelligence. It's the wisdom that comes when you stop needing to understand everything. Understanding itself becomes an act of grace. You realize that you don't need to think your way to enlightenment. You only need to stop believing that thinking will get you there. So how do you live in surrender? Begin by watching the mind without condemnation. See how it plans, worries, and clings. Smile at its efforts. Each smile is a small act of disempowerment against fear. When guilt arises, remember, a decent regret is enough. When anxiety about the future appears, whisper, let it unfold. When the need to control returns, remind yourself, life already knows what it's doing. Every time you return to this stillness, thought loses a little more of its dominance. The intervals of peace lengthen. One day you realize that thought now feels like a visitor, not a host. And you, the host, are infinite awareness, calm, luminous, serene. The true miracle is how ordinary it feels. Enlightenment is not fireworks or angels singing. It's the quiet recognition that you were never apart from peace. You were only distracted. When the distractions fall away, peace shines by itself, like sunlight revealed when the clouds drift on. At this stage, the distinction between you and God begins to dissolve. Surrender reveals unity. There was never a separate will to surrender, only the illusion of one. The ocean doesn't surrender to its waves, it simply recognizes them as itself. In the same way, awareness recognizes that every movement of thought, every impulse, every breath was always its own play. You can live your entire life in this freedom. You still go to work, love, create, and rest, but now everything is suffused with meaning. Nothing is trivial anymore because everything is God expressing. Even mistakes are seen as part of the choreography of awakening. You stop labeling things as good or bad. You see them as necessary steps in the unfolding of consciousness. When the mind accepts this, it finally rests. It doesn't need to solve reality anymore. It bows before the infinite and finds its peace. And that peace is contagious. Others feel it in your presence. They calm without knowing why. Your stillness becomes their permission to stop striving. This is how consciousness heals itself, one surrendered being at a time. In the end, there is nothing to fix, nothing to control, and nothing to fear. There is only the infinite unfolding of now, vast, silent, unchanging. The past dissolves in forgiveness, the future melts into trust, and the present reveals itself as eternity. So stop overthinking. Stop rehearsing the past and negotiating the future. Stop trying to hold the universe in your hands. Let go. Fall into the silence that has been waiting for you since before thought began. In that silence, you will remember what you are, not the one who thinks, but the one who knows. Be still, and life will think for you.